Welcome to the 15th edition of Dialogue with the Experts, presented by Prime Point Foundation, eMagazine Presence, and NextGen Political Leaders. There are a lot of confusion about the tax rules and the latest amendments in the taxation policies. Many of the individuals are also affected because of the taxation rules. Because of the COVID situation, the government has extended the due date for filing of their returns, but still the confusion remains in the minds of many people. In order to resolve this confusion and to get a proper clarification, we have invited Mr. S. Mohan, one of the leading chartered accountants of Madras City, to clarify and to give us the guidance to individuals. Welcome, Mr. Mohan, for this show. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Sir, there are a lot of amendments and other things that have happened in the recent past. Before we go into the nuances of income tax rules and other things, can you just briefly say about how the income tax concept itself evolved and the Act, Income Tax Act 1961?
Yes, sir. I think the income tax is nothing new. Although the act was passed post-independence in the year 1961, the income tax levy was there even in British time. There was an act called Income Tax Act Indian Income Tax Act 1922 was there. Even there are references to the system of direct taxation as it is known today in the Manusmriti as well as Ardhasastra. In fact, in one of the talks in Ramayana, Rama tells Bharata when he has to rule the country that on taxation he says how he has to tax the public. He says taxation, you should collect taxes like a bee collects the honey from the flower. That's the kind of course that's not possible today in this circumstances.
Then now coming to our brass tack, for an individual, I am not going to talk about the business class of income tax because they are already having a lot of chartered account seniors like you to give the guidance. For an ordinary people, for a common man, and what are the types of income that are liable for a tax, and who have to pay the income tax, and what are the types of returns that they have to submit, and and what are the due dates now? We can all combine it so that you can go with the one.
Yes, sir. I think the income is taxed under the 5 heads. Income Tax Act has divided the income of an individual or for that matter any other person as 5 heads. The first head is income from salary. I think we all know what is salary. When you are having an employer-employee relationship, I think the income received from an employer is taxed under the head income from salaries. Then there is an income from house property. If you own a immovable property and you get rent from the property, it is taxed under the head income from house property. Even if you own a commercial building like a Kalyana Mandapam or something, although it is strictly in the definition of the house property, it is in common parlance, it is not there. Even the income from that is also taxed under the head income from property only. Then comes income from profits and gains of business. So there are some small people also who carry some business. So I am just giving a hint on this. So people who derive any income from a business or a profession, there can be a doctor, architect, chartered accountant, or an engineer. If he gets income from exercising his profession, then that is come under the head income from business or profession. Then income from capital gains. See, you have a property, you have land, you have shares, you have inherited shares or you have purchased shares and sell them. Then these things will be coming under the head income from capital gains. And there is a residual head called income from other sources. Any other income which does not fall within the above 4 heads will come under the, for example, income from dividends, income from interest, all those things will come under the head income from house property. So this is this one. Coming to the due dates for filing, individuals who are not carrying on any business and who are only deriving income from other heads like income, capital gains, salaries, etc., they have to, under the present Income Tax Act, your due date is 31st July. So, and now under the COVID circumstances, as we are all know that was a lockdown, what they have done, they have extended the date originally to 30th November, which again got extended to 31st January. So as of today, the last date for individuals who are not having income.
This is only for this year. Otherwise, it is 31st July.
Yeah, it is by way of a notification they have extended, because under the Income Tax Act, the Central Board of Direct Taxes has got the power to any amend or give this one benefit to the taxpayers under 190. So under that section, they have issued a notification extending the due date up to January 31st. This is the due date. I am not going into the other complicated due dates are there, which I think is not necessary for the present circumstances.
How about the income tax returns? I think they say that they have simplified the returns. Is it so?
This simplification is not new. I think if I remember correct, when Jaswant Singh Ji was the finance minister, first attempt was made. He said that one-page return will be prescribed, and he did prescribe a one-page return that time. Problem in subsequently the assessing officers went and said that many details what we want is not available in this one-page return. So subsequently the one-page return has become a multi-page return. So even today there are a lot of, in fact this year they have added more information because the government want to have more information to track that the individual, for example, today Aadhaar number, all those other than income details are also collected. So I think I'm not very this one conversant with the numbers of the forms. If you want, I will share that with you. I think ITR 5, ITR V is to call, is a common form for other than business and individuals. I think that is what is now. Most of the individuals have to file only online. I think there used to be a time that they have given the people with less than 5 lakhs income used to be filed manually because of the problems they face. But today, since up to 5 lakhs, there is no what is called tax at all. There is no exemption limit. Exemption limit is only up to 2.5 lakhs. But up to 5 lakhs, you don't pay tax, individuals. So accordingly, there is everybody has to file the return only online. So that due date, as I mentioned already, 31st July. The form to be used for a simple, this one is ITRV. If there are any further, specific, this one, I think I will share my mail ID. I think you can write me. I will clarify that.
Oh, thank you. Then you said some about the 5 categories of income. In that you said about the salary and another is a professional income. Now, many of the professionals, they go as a consultant. They don't... they take the consultancy fee, but even though they are working like an employee, they don't get a salary. Where this consultancy fee will come?
It will come under the head income from profession and business and profession only. Because salary, I think there should be an employer-employee relationship. As you pointed out, I think if there is a contract of service as a professional consultancy, then it will go under the head income from professional. The benefit of that is, I think you can claim a depreciation. Or suppose you own a car, you can claim a depreciation on that. You can claim petrol expenses, which is not possible if you get income from salaries.
Sir, there are no, you said up to 5 lakhs, there is no tax. Suppose a person doesn't have a taxable income. Still, is he supposed to file his income tax return or he need not?
I think that. Yeah, there are circumstances. I think if your income is below 2.5 lakhs, I think one need not file the return at all. That is clearly in the Act. There are cases where about 2.5 lakhs, but your still tax is not payable. So such cases, you have to file the return because you have to show that. Similarly, even if the return is, your income is less than 2.5 lakhs, if you have, let us say you have a bank deposit, you are getting, let us say 1.5 lakhs interest income. You don't have an income tax payable nor income is below. But if the bank has deducted tax, let us say, then you have to file a return because there will be a TDS. In every case where there is a tax is deducted on your behalf by any authority, then irrespective of the income, you have to file the return. And if there's a refund, even if there's no tax payable, you can claim the refund by filing a return.
I will come on the TDS a little later. And how about the non-resident Indians? There are a lot of non-resident Indians who are working abroad for any of the Indian companies or multinational companies.
Coming to non-residents, I think they need not file a return if they don't have any income in India. Even if they don't have 1 rupee income in India, they are not required to file a return here. But there are many people who have families here. They have a bank account also. So mostly they will have some income. So in such cases, for example, if you are if the individual is in the United States and earning a salary or doing business or whatever, I think in the United States there is a rule that irrespective of the citizen of the country or this one, he has to file and pay tax on the global income. So what will happen? Even in India, if he has a income, he has to declare it there and pay tax. So in such cases, it will be helpful if you file in India and show there is no taxable income. That will help. So non-residents in case-to-case basis, however, the general rule is if you don't have any income in India, I think you don't have to file the return in India.
Suppose some of the people like Infosys, TCS or Wipro, they are all working abroad in the US and other places. If their salaries are credited in India, then they have to pay the income tax as per Indian laws. Is it not?
That is true. That is true. Again,
if they are receiving the salary in US dollars, then they don't need to pay.
Exactly, sir, not exactly. There is a little complication here. I would like to clarify that. I think if an individual, let us say, leaves the country and works in a foreign country and for less than 182 days, then he has to pay tax in India even on the income earned abroad. Oh. Because there is a provision called residential status. So if a person going on employment, I think he has to stay abroad for 182 days or more. Then only he will be considered as non-resident. Otherwise, he will be considered as a resident. And a resident individual has to pay on the entire income either earned in India or abroad. So that is the position
as per Indian rule. Now the sale of immovable properties. If there's a sale of immovable properties, when it will be taxable or whether it will be under capital gains?
Coming to the sale of immovable property, I think there are two types of immovable property I dealt in the Income Tax Act. Either it is a residential house or it is other property, for example, land, etc. If it is a residential property, then you can sell, and if there, let us say you have inherited a property which your father has given you, and that your father might have acquired it, let us say, for 10,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees. Today it may be fetching 1 crore rupees. So it is not that the exact difference between the 1 crore and 1 lakh, your father's cost of acquisition is taxed. You have the government understands that the appreciation of rupee. So they have given what is called a cost inflation index. So apart from that, if the property is purchased prior to 1/4/2001, you can still take, let us say you have your father has acquired or you have acquired the property somewhere in 1950s or 60s. You can still replace take the cost as 1/4/2001 valuation. Let us say you have acquired a 10 lakhs flat at 10 lakhs rupees somewhere in 1980s or 90s, whereas you are selling it for today at 1 crore. You don't have to pay the difference, but you take 2001 valuation and then then 2001 to 2020, there is a consolidation number is that you can still have. So then the difference is only taxed as a capital gain. And incidentally, capital gains are taxed at a lower rate if it is a long-term capital gain. When I mean long-term, it is held for more than 3 years. It is taxed at 20% as against 30%, which is the highest tax. And I think I can also explain, if there is a residential property, you have if you have held it for more than 3 years, you are at liberty to use that money to buy a new house to the extent of capital gains. And then you are entitled for a complete exemption. Suppose you are not investing that money in a new house property, then I think you can still put that money in some bonds like rural electrification bonds, like that. Few bonds are notified. So there, if you...
But it's till such time a new property is acquired?
No, sir. It is not new property. You can put it in that and 3 years you hold that. And then after 3 years, you can get back the bond. Still, you will not pay tax.
Suppose in the meanwhile, you are not able to buy a new property, but in the meanwhile, you put it in this bond. You are able to get some new property. then in that, can you break and then take the property?
Sir, I think normally if you are looking for a property and you are not immediately able to invest the money in a property, you don't have to put it in the bonds. You can put it in a bank and call with a specific nomenclature like capital gains account scheme. You can keep it in either a SB account or a fixed deposit account. If normally banks will explain. I think you are a banker, you know
Okay.
it. So I think you can keep it in a fixed deposit, and then as and when you locate a property, then you can utilize that money and buy a property. But you have to do it within 2 years from the end of the this one. For example, let us say you have sold the property today, which is November. I think you are entitled to do it till March 2022. Am I right? Yeah, March 2022. You are entitled. But
if you are not able to acquire by the time, then you can put it in the bank capital gains, and then you can look for.
No, sir. No, I think if you want, you have to make that this one decision of buying a property or putting in the bond within 6 months from the transfer. So if you put it in capital gains, you have to buy a property. Otherwise, it will be taxed in the year in which I think you are now, the 2-year period is over. It will be taxed in that year.
So within 6 months, you have to take a decision which way you are going to decide. Suppose if you are not filing an income tax returns on the due date, now it is the 31st January. What is the consequences?
See, up to 31st January, if you don't file the return in this year, you will, if your income is above 1 lakh, you will pay 10,000 rupees a late fee or penalty or whatever you call it, irrespective of your taxable income. Your taxable income could, this one is 1 lakh, let us say. Even if you have paid this one taxes by way of advance tax, still you will pay the 10,000 rupees as this one. So less than that, I think less than 1 lakh, if the tax is there, you pay only 5,000 rupees.
5,000. So, but anyway, you have to file the income tax return compulsorily, even if you have paid the tax. Is it not?
That's right.
Then there are two types of people. Last time, Honorable Finance Minister said that 2 types of calculation of income tax. It is more confusing also because of an old method and new flat method. Can you just give a elaboration on that?
Yes, sir. I think the Honorable Finance Minister has brought in an optional tax scheme. I think I will give an example. I think there are, the difference is like this. There are many people who invest money in LIC and other savings instrument, and up to under Section 80C, you are entitled for 1 lakh, up to 1,50,000, you can deduct it. And you can claim PF contribution, your HRA, all those things are. Now, I will take an example. I will share this actually later with you. I think so that you can have. I am not able to today do that. So let us say your annual income of this one under 8 lakhs, let us assume his income. Let us say he has got if he is a salaried employee, he will have standard deduction of 50,000 rupees. And he will have a PF contribution of 25,000 rupees. And house rent allowance, if he is getting, he will have 30,000 rupees. Leave travel concession of 25,000 rupees. So all aggregating to 1,30,000 rupees, he will have a deduction on this 8 lakhs. So his net income taxable is only 6,70,000. And he will pay a tax of 48,360 rupees on this. Same employee, let us say he is having same 8 lakh, but he is not willing to save anything. His income will be 8 lakhs, and he will, under the present scheme, he will pay only 46,800 rupees.
Oh.
In other words, his cash flow will be with him, but he will pay only 46,800 rupees, which is about 2,000 rupees lesser than this one on 8 lakh. It will vary.
It depends on the case-to-case basis. It depends on the case-to-case basis.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. I have another this one. So if you let us say same this one is 13 lakhs is the income, 1,47,000 with saving, 1,43,000 is the tax payable under the new scheme without any saving. This is this is optional, and you can opt before the this one filing the return. And there is no compulsion that you have, once you opt, you have to be under the same this one. You can next year, you can change in the different this one. So there
whichever you feel that it is beneficial to you, you can go for that.
Absolutely correct.
There's no necessity that I need to stick on only to this method. Earlier, this time I opt for the earlier method, and next year I can opt for a new method also.
Yeah, you can plan. You are entitled to plan your tax accordingly and do it.
Okay. Sir, then tell me something about the 26AS, the TDS you were mentioning about that. And 26A is also connected with that. What is the 26AS, how it is relevant for that?
Sir, I think 26AS is a new form, a name of the form, which I think which is nothing but like your bank account. See, there are various people who deduct. For example, when a bank, they did a paid interest on your savings deposit or not on savings deposit, only fixed deposit. They deduct tax. They report to the government and they remit the tax on your behalf. Similarly, if you are an employee, your employer deduct the tax and remit to the government and report on your behalf. If you mentioned about the professional income, you are a consultant, you are the person who has employed you will deduct every time he makes a payment, 10% of that, he will pay it. So various sorts of people who are giving income to you will deduct tax and pay to the government. So whether they have paid or not, like your bank account, a passbook is similar to passbook is what is called 26AS. A government maintains for every individual whose tax is deducted by various people, deductors. They give you a chart in which who has paid you, how much they have income they have given you according to them, what is the tax, and when they have paid. If they have not paid or if they have not reported to the government under TDS return, then this will not apply. So this is 26AS. So every individual who is having a PAN and a regular registered assessee can download and see whether my employer or some person who is availing services have paid my TDS deducted from my account. Because till they remit to this one, that is your money. They have to supposed to pay to the government. There are consequences of levying penalty and prosecution, etc. and the person who has deducted but not paid. So this is as now on the further. Now, government has found it necessary that 26AS should be used more as a tracking mechanism. So, what they do, even now onwards, GST you have paid or somebody you have made a sale to somebody, those details also will be available. Similarly, if you have sold a property and this one, the other person who buying the property has to deduct 1% on the sale consideration. That's all. So government at a glance will be able to know what all the income you have. And you also will know whether all your income deducted by the other person has come into your account. This is what is 26AS in short.
Certain companies in Chennai, even the very well-known companies, they deduct TDS from the consultants and they don't remit it. Ultimately, the people who are working for them, they run pillar to post because they have to file their income tax in the last minute. Then what are the consequences?
Unfortunately, this situation creates a problem to the person whose income is withheld by the other person, as you rightly mentioned. If they have not paid the taxes, I am also aware of many companies which are well-known companies which have deducted but not paid to the government. Actually, that is an offense for which the person who has not paid can be arrested and even prosecuted. But that is not going to solve your problem and my problem and many. So, unfortunately, the government did not look into it, but now courts have told the government that you cannot punish somebody for somebody's fault. So now, up to I remember, I think up to 1 lakh or so, even if they have not paid, they will give you credit. I think this is what now they have.
Now the employees, the individuals can file the income tax return with the notional value of tax deduction, even though the employer has not remitted the money?
Yes, that's what now the government courts have advised. I think so far how they are practically going to, because government is deprived of the revenue, but what the court logic is, you have to hold the other person who is not paying the tax. So the person who has not paid the tax is at default. So you prosecute him, you penalize him, but don't penalize the person who is a victim. So this is the court system. So this we have to see how the government is going.
Okay. Now, sir, now there are a lot of, now we are nearing end of this conversation. Now the bank, the income tax department has got a lot of technology tools and connected to the banks. Even the minute transactions are even watched by the income tax department. Still, how the Binami transactions or Binami holders are emerging in spite of all the vigilance?
Sir, I think here technology alone does not help in the sense. The person who is using the technology should know how to use that. That is the problem. So the income tax officer, if he is unable to understand, so for example, I open an account, my income, but let us say I open in your name with your concurrence or without concurrence, it is not possible. That will amount to fraudulent. So I think, let us say, then you will be a Binami on my behalf. So the government has no way they can know that it is not your income, but you are declaring on behalf of this. See, I can tell, in spite of so many, now today PAN is a very, very essential thing and Aadhaar is a very essential thing to, still people are able to show only few banks, and for a few banks they are not able to show it in the returns. And this is because that to the extent of technology, the officers also should be trained to be vigilant and intelligent enough to track the violations. And this is what the conclusion.
Any other things, sir, before conclusion, very quickly within 30 seconds, anything would you like to say as a crux of your conversation?
Yes, sir. I think I think the Prime Minister also mentioned this once, and there is a huge thinking that in a country of 130 crores population, only 1 crore plus, I think less than 2 crore people are filing the tax return. This is what is the general observation. But we forget one thing: the majority of the still population is agriculture is the main thing. Agriculture is not brought into the mainstream of Indian taxation. That is one reason. Still, there are many people, I think a substantial portion of our population is having less than 2.5 lakh. So, because of that, what happened? The department starts, the honest taxpayers are being hounded, is my opinion. I think they should, if you want to broad base the tax, I think you should look into ways of that. You cannot say that 90% of the population is this one evading tax. That is not the case, according, because I have 40 years of experience. I feel that. So this is what I want to bring to the notice. And of course, I should appreciate that individuals who are taxpayers, especially salary payers, are the most contributing people to the exchequer. That's all, sir.
So thank you very much, sir, for sparing your very valuable time. Now, suppose if the viewers want to contact you, can I share your contact number?
Yes, sir, please. Yes. My email ID is with you. Kindly, you can share that, sir. I think they can write a mail, and certainly I will attend to
that. This is the email ID of Mr. Mohan, and yesmohanca@gmail.com. And thank you very much, sir, for the very valuable time that you have spared with us on behalf of Prime Point Foundation, eMagazine Presence, and NextGen Political Leaders. I thank all the viewers, and I thank Mr. Mohan for the excellent time. Thank you.
It is my pleasure, sir. Thank you, sir.